Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing a top 10. Topic of the top 10, improving New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now the reason I'm doing this video is President Tanahashi put out a few days ago, or at least when I seen it, it was a few days ago, a list of 10 things he was looking to do to improve New Japan Pro Wrestling. Some of them are going to coincide with my list. Some of my list is going to be totally different. This is my ideas for this, and this is based off of a United States fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So my views are basically on what I would like to see. It may be different for someone that follows it in Japan, or maybe a different experience. Cultures are a little bit different. These are my ideas on how I think you can improve the company, make it better. With that being said, let's jump right into it. Number 10, promote your big shows and your app on your partners with TNA and AEW. Oftentimes we'll see a wrestler, they'll come and they'll make an appearance on AEW, or they'll make an appearance on TNA, and they'll tell us they're from New Japan, but they won't say something like, hey, next week New Japan starts the G1 Climax, or we're in the middle of the Best of Super Juniors. Which, by the way, if you're watching this, this is going to come out, or this is going to be recorded before the finals of the Super Juniors, and before Dominion. Dominion at this point is about 12 hours away or so. So some of these things may happen there. If they do, I guess I'm a prophet. But anyway, I digress. Stuff like that, letting us know, hey, this is what's going to happen. Or if you have someone like, let's say for instance, Chris Bay and Ace Austin go into World Tag League again. Show us some video of how they're doing. Give us their record. Explain to the fans how they could see that. If AEW sends the Acclaimed over for World Tag League, or lets Claudio do the G1, show us how he's doing. Give us an update. Let us know we can watch it on New Japan World. Give us a schedule. This is something simple that they could ask of their partners and have their partners do for them. I think it would be an easy improvement. I think it would definitely help. Now going from that on number 9. This is one I definitely remember that Tanahashi addressed in his top 10 or his 10 things, and that's consolidating some of the titles. He had mentioned that the New Japan Strong titles are all going to be United States based only. He mentioned about consolidating some of the others. I think he said that the tag titles are being consolidated on Dominion, which is the Strong tag titles and the New Japan tag titles. And I think that's a good step. I think that's something that we see in a lot of companies. It's something that I think is a negative in AEW and even in WWE to an extent. To me, something like WWE having two people that are considered on the same level as world champions or women's champions kind of dilutes the effect of having a world champion. And with AEW, I mean, they've got belts for pretty much anybody that walks out on the stage, and if it's not one of their belts, they're highlighting belts from different companies. I liked what he said here about consolidating some of them. He said it would be about an 18-month process, which I think it's probably because they have plans already for Wrestle Kingdom, so we're not going to see a lot of those changes till after Wrestle Kingdom. He also mentioned giving better storylines and explaining, like let's say someone's going after the Never Openweight Championship, explaining what that is and what that means and how that differs from the IWGP World Championship, or how that differs from the Television Championship, and what they mean and what each individual division has, and have individual wrestlers that are in that division. Like, let's say, for instance, Zack Sabre Jr. is the number one contender in the TV division. Well, then he's not necessarily the number one contender in the Never Openweight division, and that's not necessarily a title he's going after. Have the wrestlers state in their backstage segments, which I think are fantastic. Their backstage interviews are probably some of the best things I think you see in wrestling. It gives it that sports-based feel. Having someone come on there and say, hey, I would like to get this championship, this is what I'm aiming for, this is why, that would make a lot more sense to build the importance in each one of those titles that they do decide to keep. Now going from that on number 8. And this is probably strictly a American problem. I don't know what it's like around the rest of the world, but the US shows that are pay-per-views, they should come free with the the New Japan World subscription. I think that American fans and anywhere else that has the WWE Network or WWE on Peacock has been spoiled by the fact that you pay one low price of $9.99 or wherever it is or whatever it is where you are. I think it's up to $14.99 now. I don't even pay attention, to be honest. I just pay it. And we've been spoiled to the fact that we get all the big shows. WrestleMania's on there, SummerSlam's on there, Royal Rumble's on there, Clash at the Castle. What that also does is frees it up for them on the lesser shows to not put 11, 12 matches. They could give us a show that has 5 matches, 6 matches, and make each one of them super concentrated and a really good match. And you don't feel like you're ripped off because you didn't pay $50 for 5 matches. I think this is something that I've always questioned. I never understood why, especially if they're trying to grow in North America, which I think was part of the reason for doing these shows. Let the North American fans who are used to paying $9.99 a month, that are paying for your New Japan World subscription, let them watch these shows. Or if not, give us a second tier. Give us a tier where for $5 extra we get these shows. I think it's something that a lot of fans would love to see, and it would definitely help build awareness of the company, and it would tie in with what I said with the TNA and AEW promoting them, because a lot of those American shows have TNA and AEW talent on them. So let's say, for instance, there's a show in Chicago, which is generally going to be a New Japan pay-per-view, and on that, Darby Allin's going to be there for AEW, Josh Alexander for TNA. Well, on those shows, they could say, hey, Josh Alexander is wrestling Shingo on the New Japan show this weekend. You could go buy that here on New Japan World with your subscription to New Japan World. I think it would draw subscribers in. I think ultimately you would get more buys in the long run because more people would be willing to purchase that at the lower rate and maybe stick around and say, oh, I like this. Oh, I see next month there's 15 shows for the G1 Climax. I've always heard that was awesome. I'm going to stay and subscribe to watch that. I think it would help to drive the viewership of New Japan World up, at least here, like I said, and probably some other places in the world that want to see that talent as well and don't want to fork out more than they already are. Now, coming from that, our number 7. This is something that New Japan has always been strong at having some top gaijin there, meaning top foreign talent, whether it be guys like Scott Norton in the 90s or Kurt Angle in the 2000s, or even over the last decade or decade and a half with Prince Devitt, AJ Styles, Kenny Omega, Jay White, all of those people that were kind of in the mix for their world championship and up towards the top of the card. They need to bring in some new top gaijin talent, whether that's elevating guys that are already on their roster that the fans love, like Zack Sabre Jr. and Jeff Cobb, or looking to be players in free agency when someone like a Chad Gable comes up, or maybe a Malachi Black, someone that may be looking to change their promotion when their contract's up. Let's bring them into New Japan. Let's have them be that guy, be that bridge. For a lot of people, a lot of the reason they watch New Japan or have over the past few years have been the foreign talent, have been people like Jericho going over, Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley now doing shows with them. That's a big draw for people that are fans of those wrestlers. And if you bring some of them in on a full-time basis, maybe that'll help, again, with your overall viewership, again, selling New Japan World, building the company. Now, going from that, our number 6. Speaking of companies, I believe it's the end of this month or next month where New Japan fully owns Stardom, or their parent company fully owns Stardom. We need more Stardom New Japan crossover. Fans like myself that hear about how great Stardom is, but don't necessarily watch it or see very few shows, if we had more of that, whether it be putting Stardom in full on New Japan World, or even just putting matches on the New Japan cards that we're already going to watch, help expose us to that brand and help bring people that may have not watched your show that want to see Mayu Iwatani or Mina Shirakawa or Starlight Kid or AZM or any of the other immensely talented women that are in Stardom. I think that would be a big plus for them. It would be a big thing to bring those fans together, the New Japan and Stardom fans. And again, I think it would help with the overall product, in my opinion. Now, going from that, our number 5. One thing that I see a lot of complaints on, whether it be on Twitter or X, while I'm watching the New Japan shows, because a lot of times I'll pull that up kind of to help keep myself awake. I'll kind of doom scroll through that as there's down parts in the show, whether it be between matches or when they take an intermission. And a lot of what you see people complain about, whether it be Japanese fans or American fans, is House of Torture. They need to disband House of Torture or totally change what they're doing with it. The constant interference, the constant shenanigans, every House of Torture match is the same. And it's not that there's not talented people in House of Torture. There actually is. They're all very talented. The way that they're being booked is really kind of annoying if you ask me. And I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to do a more sports entertainment based thing. Be heels because they're going against Japanese tradition. It makes a lot of sense. However, I think the gimmick has run its course. It's to the point where people just want House of Torture gone, and maybe they can bring some of the wrestlers out of House of Torture, whether it be a young guy like Ren Narita or an established star like Evil, and take them and put them on a different path to bring them back to where fans love them again. They need to get rid of the faction. They need to make it happen probably really quickly. Now, speaking of young stars, our number 4. This is a very specific thing. I believe that Shota Umino should win the G1 Climax this year and go on to Wrestle Kingdom to face his mentor, Jon Moxley. At some point, Shota has to beat Mox. The story's been going on for 5 years that he was this young boy, that they're friends, that he grew from him. He finally challenged him and couldn't beat him just recently. But this would be a way to take someone like Shota Umino, who I think could be a big star in the company, and elevate him right away. Now, that would include the fact that Mox would have to hold the title until Wrestle Kingdom, which I think they're planning to do anyway. I don't think Mox is going to be a champion that defends it in the G1 or even is in the G1, but he might be. I'd love to see it where Umino wins, and even if you want to go a step further, have him beat another one of the young stars, the ones that are being called the new 4 pillars, with him, Yotatsuji, Ren Narita, and Yuya Uemura, or the new 3 Musketeers. I add the 4th. I think that all 4 of them are huge stars in the making. A lot of people only say Narita, Tsuji, and Umino. I think Uemura is right up there with them. Have the finals be Shota versus Narita, Shota versus Tsuji, one of these type matches where both guys look better because they made it all the way to the finals. You could have that rivalry in the background, kind of like Chona and Muto back in the day, and have them be against each other for the rest of however long they're going to be in New Japan. I think it would be a great idea. Again, it would signal a new era in New Japan, a new blood, new stories, everything of that nature. We have, between the loss of big stars like Okada, Jay White, Will Ospreay, other stars like Juice Robinson, Aussie Open, there is a vacuum at the top of the card. Between that and other mainstays like Tetsuya Naito and Hiroshi Tanahashi being towards the end of their career and not being able to carry the division as they used to be. And I love both those guys. I love Tanahashi, I love Naito. I think they're both great. I think they're 2 of the best wrestlers that I've ever seen. But they're at a point in their career where they do have star power, but they can't be the face of the company anymore. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They've been there for a very long time, and it's time for them to let other people come and take some of that heavy lifting. And like I said, I think this would be a great way to do that. Now, go from that to number 3. I keep talking about elevating people and finding new stars. 2 people that need to get out of the junior division and elevate to the heavyweights and could maybe bring a whole new set of matchups and a whole new set of storylines. El Desperado and Hiromu Takahashi. I think both of these guys have done absolutely everything you could possibly do in the junior division. I think they're absolutely awesome wrestlers. They're 2 of the best juniors that have ever done it. I know I keep saying stuff like that, but let's move them up. Someone like Hiromu, his charisma, his magnetism, imagine him being in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom. He would automatically bring all the fans he has and probably add many more. Or Despy. Imagine Despy challenging for one of the big championships or being the main guy in his faction, being the top guy in his team. I think both of these guys are extremely talented. Both of these guys have a following. Both of these guys need to go up a little bit more. Not saying that the junior division is a step down, but the junior division, it's a step down. You're not looked at as being the top guy. no matter how many tickets you sell, no matter how popular you are. It's been done before. People have came out of the division and stepped up and became big stars. Ospreay, Omega, Zack Sabre Jr., a whole ton of others that I could probably think of in the next couple minutes, but I digress. Time to elevate these two, get them in the top of the card, have them having new matchups. I think it would be fun. Now going from that, our number 2, stop letting AEW poach your talent. I just mentioned it a bit ago when talking about the need for new talent. Part of that reason is, over the last few years, we've seen Jay White leave, Juice Robinson, Aussie Open, Kazuchika Okada. Kazuchika Okada is probably in the Mount Rushmore of Japanese wrestling talent at this point. Having people like them leave, having Shibata leave, and all of them going to AEW. It kind of feels like it's a one-way street. And maybe it's a money thing. I know, from what I understand, New Japan doesn't really have the money to be big-time players for these guys, and AEW does. But you have a working relationship with the company. Say to them, hey, you want to sign Okada when his time's up? Great. Let's go ahead. You do that. Let us get some dates on him. However, if you want to sign Okada, how about you let us use Claudio Castagnoli for 6 months? How about a guy like Powerhouse Hobbs, where it doesn't seem that you're pushing him? How about we use him for a year? Get something in return for this. Or poach some of their talent that are being underused. Someone like a Ricky Starks that is not being used to his full potential. Someone like the just mentioned Will Hobbs. Bring him over. Someone that we've seen just recently that seems to be a little disgruntled. And Takeshita. Bring Takeshita in. Takeshita would be a big star in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It just feels like they opened the quote-unquote forbidden door only for AEW to come in and rob them of everything they have. I don't know how they fix it. I would find a way. I would say something. And I understand probably half of these guys, or most of those guys, had offers for WWE as well, and they may have went there if AEW didn't try and steal them. So I don't know. I just think there's something better that could come out of that relationship on that end. Now, before I get to my number 1, I do a thing here on my top 10s called the best of the rest. Basically, it's things that are considered for the list but didn't quite make it. First up, speaking of Forbidden Door, have a Forbidden Door event in Japan. And I'm not just talking 1 or 2 guys going over and doing a big show for them or doing 3 weeks there. I'm talking a full-on Japan version of Forbidden Door. AEW versus New Japan on Japanese soil. Again, this is another thing that kind of ties back to what I was saying, where it feels one-sided, that AEW is getting way more benefit from this relationship than New Japan is, in my opinion, and a way that they could balance that back, have some of their talent go to the Super Show in New Japan. We've already seen that the fans in New Japan want to see wrestlers like Bryan Danielson. They want to see Claudio Castagnoli, Eddie Kingston, and I'm sure there's a dozen other people they'd love to see. They'd like to see some of their talent come back. Ospreay, Okada, Omega, have them come for matches there. The Young Bucks. To me, it would just be another thing that would help the bottom line in New Japan. Again, show that it's not so much of a one-sided relationship. It's just something I'd love to see. Last but not least, on the best of the rest, improve the interface for New Japan World. They recently did an update, and I think when I say recently, it's within the past 6 months or so. And while there is some stylistic upgrades, it still has a lot of the problems. There's a lot of times where I'll have issues trying to watch a live show, and I'm not the only one, because like I said earlier, I'll see all on Twitter or Reddit, people are having the same issues. The interface itself has never been great, whether it be the old or new. It's hard to find things, and it should be easier. I should be able to go in there and, like Peacock, I could type in WrestleMania and it pulls up all the WrestleManias. New Japan World, I should be able to type in Wrestle Kingdom and get all of that, and get them all as shows, not individual matches. I don't know, I just think they could improve the interface, make it better, make it worth more for your buck. There's a lot of people that get New Japan World just for Wrestle Kingdom and then get rid of it right away because they only wanted to watch Wrestle Kingdom. If maybe the interface was better, maybe they'd stick around for more. Just my opinion, definitely something I think they should do. Now, before I get to my number 1, if you think I put something too high, put something too low, you have an opinion on something that New Japan could do to improve their product, let me know down here in the comments. While you're there, smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. If you see where it says join, that's how you become a member. Becoming a member definitely helps me out. And with all that being said, my number one idea to improve New Japan Pro Wrestling, a hostile takeover / new top factions, a full shakeup of what's going on right now. And I've mentioned this a bit all through this video, talking about the younger talent, Shota Umino, Yota Tsuji, Yuya Uemura, Ren Narita, being the 4 guys that I think are at the forefront of that. I think it's time for them to have either hostile takeovers or create their own factions. One of the things that made a guy like Nakamura so big is Nakamura broke off of GBH to make Chaos. Minoru Suzuki taking over his faction to make it Suzuki-gun. The creation of LIJ, stuff of that nature. We need to have a new influx of new stories with new factions or reorganized factions. Something like Bullet Club. Bullet Club has never meant less than it does right now. And this is not a knock to any of the talent in Bullet Club. It's just when you think of the first decade of Bullet Club, they always had one of the top 3 or 4 talents on their roster. Whether it be Devitt, whether it be Omega, AJ Styles, Jay White, they always had a guy that was right there at the top. And while I think someone like Gabe Kidd could finally get that, and while I think that someone like Gabe Kidd could rise to that position, I don't think he's quite there yet. And I don't think that Bullet Club is what brings him there. I think Bullet Club has ran its course. I think Chaos has ran its course. Without Okada, what is Chaos? Without Okada and Nakamura, what is it? Is it just another extension of Hantai? We already know I'm in favor of getting rid of House of Torture. Other factions like Just 5 Guys, I don't know, it just hasn't grown on me yet. I think United Kingdom, if they restructure it properly, if Jeff Cobb takes a bigger role, or Hanare takes a bigger role, or even TJP, they could keep that, because I think there's still something there. I think there's something there with LIJ still, too. I still think that's the most popular faction. It's got some of the most popular wrestlers there, whether it be Naito, Shingo, Hiromu, Tsuji. I think that all those guys are right there at the top. Maybe it's time for Tsuji to overtake Naito and become the leader of LIJ going forward. Maybe some of these guys need to create factions that are more suited for them and that they're synonymous with. I mean, if you think about it, anybody in Chaos, they're going to be compared to Nakamura and Okada. Anybody in Bullet Club, they're going to be compared to Styles and Omega and Jay White. Anyone in LIJ is going to be compared to Naito. Anyone in the United Empire is going to be compared to Will Ospreay. Now, this isn't to say that some of the younger talent or some of the even older talent there can't rise up and be just as good, if not better. That's totally possible. But I think you're always going to have those issues. Having, like what I just mentioned, someone like Yota Tsuji taking over from Naito in LIJ, it automatically tells you this guy is on Naito's level. Having someone like, let's say, Narita breaking off from House of Torture and creating his own faction tells us this guy's a leader. Having Shota Umino create a new face faction, kind of to be the new version of Chaos, tells us that he's a leader. It's just little things like that, especially with how faction heavy New Japan Pro Wrestling is. I think they need to shake up the factions, get rid of some, revamp others, maybe change the course of some, maybe Chaos goes full heel again. I don't know, it's just one of the things that I think, and probably the biggest thing that I think that they could do to improve the product, in my opinion. Like I said, if you have a different opinion, you have an idea, you like my ideas, let me know down here in the comments. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another Heel Heat Top 10.